All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Haven by Human. Today we have a fantastic panel. I'm very excited to welcome our panelists here. Quick word about me. My name is Amir. I come from Equative. I've been working in the gaming industry previously in companies such as Azerion, and before that, I was running high impact and creative digital business named Sublime. So I know just a bit about the gaming and the creativity. So let's start now, and I would love to for you guys to introduce yourself. So please, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning. I'm Cady. I work in the ad sales division at NBCUNIVERSAL. I lead advanced advertising and partnerships. So that's our programmatic business, our data targeting business, our data-driven linear business, as well as partnerships from our social partners to our video distribution partners to our monetization partners, of which Anzu and in-game advertising is a key one. And very excited to be here, and we're very excited as NBCU to help bring brands into in-game advertising.
Fantastic, thank you. Ben?
Hey everyone, my name is Ben Fenster. I'm the chief product and one of the co-founders of Anzu. And I'm super excited to be here and talk about a partnership with Human and everything you can do to protect yourself while buying intrinsic in-game ads.
Thank you, fantastic. Liat with a T.
Exactly. Hello, I'm Liat from ODEEO. I'm VP product at ODEEO. So what we do is we bring audio ads into games. So we're in the in-game industry trying to bring for the first time audio ads in the experience of the game to create a seamless experience for the users instead of taking them out of the game experience to create a very engaging experience that lets them play on. And yeah, that's us.
Great. And Emma and Aurora.
Aurora is hiding, but she's here. She will join later, to anyone who wants a pet. But hey, Emma Raz, Director of Commercial at Number 8. We are behavioral intelligence platform. We actually do AI and edge computing to detect the behavior of the player as they're playing games and understand who they are as people and when and the environment in which they play.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thomas?
I'm Tamer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Human Security. Great to be here.
That was short.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. All right, let's dive in straight away into the real topic. So, historically, digital advertising always been a 2D advertising, and with the emergence of in-game advertising and the Metaverse, now we have to think differently when it comes to advertising. And in-game advertising, we have to think in 3D. So what does that implicate for our business? What are the challenges of it? And I think, who wants to start?
Probably the person that does 3D.
Yeah.
This one has your name on it, by the way. Literally.
So we've been working very hard with the IAB and the MRC to define the new standard of what is measurement of intrinsic in-game ads within 3D environments, 2D game environments, Metaverse, and many forms of intrinsic ads. And the main differences are, there are actually main three differences. The first one is the addition of an angle threshold, the angle of the ad in relation to the screen, which increases, of course, the quality of the definition of in-view for intrinsic in-game ads is actually higher than 2D ads. There is no discount for large ads that can get 30% occlusion instead of 50. And the definition of screen real estate is actually being reduced to net screen real estate, which means it's the screen real estate minus the occlusion. So when you think about an in-view intrinsic in-game ad, it's actually at a much higher standard than what you expect. And you know, when you want to get the trust for this new standard, our way was always to over-deliver. This is what we work together with the IBM MRC to define. And the second thing, on top of the definition, is the content itself. No second screen, dynamic, engaging experience, which again leads to much higher attention and viewability.
Oh, thank you. Very interesting. Tana, do you have an opinion about it?
Yeah, when I think about not necessarily 3D, but virtual worlds, I think that it's a world made out of code completely, and that opens up huge opportunities for advertising, for changing content, for changing literally the chair you're sitting on, the walls, right? And it also opens up opportunities for measurement where everything is data. I was blown away when Ben early on in our partnership showed the resolution of data in the environment in a console. It was unbelievable. That doesn't exist on the open web today. So, I think I'll say this: the biggest failure in cyber, almost always, is that it's an afterthought in cybersecurity, and you go in afterwards. And I think one of the most important things with emerging environments like in-game or audio is a security-first mindset, where you want to build it into the design, which Anzu is a great example of that, for one of the few in this whole world where it's actually baked in. Yeah.
Okay, great. Very interesting point of view from a very technical man and a very security-focused man. So I would like to have also an opinion from a advertiser and publisher as well, both. I mean, I would like to talk about effectiveness, actually. When I was working in the gaming industry, I realized that there were a lot of moving parts, actually, and the idea was just like, how do we measure effectiveness, and how do we push along those conversations at the moment? So maybe it's a question for you, Joe.
Sure, happy to. There's lots of ways to measure it, but ultimately it's about your individual campaign objective and whether or not you're able to achieve that, right? So in our partnership with Anzu, we've now run a variety of different advertisers from different categories who have different campaign objectives, from top of the funnel awareness, where we had a campaign recently with a luxury auto. They were looking to drive brand awareness. Ran the campaign, results were outstanding, to the point that 3/4 of the audience had a lift in brand awareness. So one measure of effectiveness. On the other end of the spectrum, we ran a conversion campaign where the advertiser was looking to drive website visitation, so very measurable. That was with a sports betting company. It was so effective that advertiser renewed their campaign and then renewed their campaign a third time, which I think is ultimately the measure of effectiveness, is that you come back and do more together. So we found the in-game advertising space overall to be quite effective for brands, and really our biggest message to our customers is that you need to get started and you need to start trialing it, and then you'll learn and you'll figure out how to optimize from there. But we've got a couple of great case studies already. All
right. Hey, Matt, do you have an opinion about it?
Measurement, always. Well, measurement is one of those things that in every conference we talk about. And it's one of the things that brands always complain about. They always want new ways to measure. They're never sure what they want to measure, and they can never compare it with real environments. There is a few, I think attention is one of the keywords that we have all heard and we've all discussed, and I think we have an actual dedicated question for that. I am sorry. The water is gone. And even if we look at that space, there's still a long way for us to go, because even defining what does it mean to us, what can it look, and then understanding how can we measure it at scale in a way that is actually comparable between the different environments, to decide to invest in game rather than to invest in CTV, rather than to invest in traditional audio, rather than to invest in other places, digital out of home. That is where we still have a long way to go, and probably a lot of conversations together with the advertisers and with the agencies themselves to really try to come together and understand what are we actually measuring, what do we want to see, and how do we can confirm that is indeed effective over time. So I think there are case studies. Obviously, in-game is a super engaging environment. It's naturally, it lends itself to being effective. But in terms of measurement, I think the industry has some road. Yeah.
There's room to grow, basically.
There's always room to grow.
There's room to grow, right.
To just build on that a little bit, I think for many brands, if not most, or really all brands, it likely will be less about either or, and will be more about how do you put those mediums together. Like, we think CTV and in-game advertising are going to be excellent companions, and we've seen this across CTV and social as well. As you deliver messages in multi-platform, multimedia environments, the effect resonates and sort of builds. And we think that'll be true for gaming as well.
So it's a very interesting angle. Why, actually, they complement each other? Are they just different KPIs that bring, I don't know, attention, that bring coverage, whatever? What are the KPIs that make CTV and in gaming complement each other?
I mean, from my perspective, just starting with the basics of reach and frequency, right? You're adding a little bit more reach, you're driving a bit more engagement, you're tending to drive it while people are in different mindsets, doing different tasks. So you're sort of hitting, a different part of your message, I think, depending on where it is that you're exposing that person.
Oh, great.
And maybe one thing about it is, even, Netflix CEO said his biggest competition wasn't Hulu, it was gaming, right? So
Exactly.
what I'm trying to say is that if you have, when people are not watching TV, they are now playing, and you can deliver the message across these different channels when they do different things, we have results that show when you run such a retargeting campaigns on both channels, you will see an uplift in the channels that has conversion just from the additional exposure in the channel that focuses on brand awareness.
All right. And Liat,
The beauty of gaming is that it's the new entertainment format, right? Like, it really is the competitor of Netflix, and everyone's a gamer today, right?
Netflix is in gaming now as well.
Well, true. But let's talk about the traditional Netflix. Like, what we're saying is that there are 3 billion gamers out there, right? Like, everyone's a gamer. It's not the same concept that we had before of, like, it's a teenager in a basement that, like, plays his games. It's not that. It's our kids, it's our moms, it's our grandparents, right? Everyone plays games. So that's just such a broad audience that we can get to, and that's incredible, and that really it's really complementary to all the other channels like CTV that we have right now.
I think it will also allow you to interact with your users in different touch points. So, for example, if we're looking at mobile gaming, those are games we take on the road. So we interact with them in different environments. You can touch base with your customer in different environments and different situations, which is not necessarily possible in the CTV, just in CTV. So basically, you want to engage with your customers in different touch points, in different environments, to kind of create different messaging to really drive for engagement. I will say, though, because marketing budgets are a bit tighter now and there is a higher scrutiny, sometimes it is an or situation, so we do need to justify the spend, but it's definitely a really valuable environment that brands should invest in more. They just need a bit more probably transparency and a bit more information about what's happening there to understand it better. That's all.
Great thinking. Do you want to make any comments?
From the human perspective, our first principle is ensuring that there's a real person on the other side. Almost every single bot that we've ever seen is brand safe and viewable, and so that leads to data contamination. So we're often asked to protect measurement from being contaminated, but human first, making sure it's clean and accurate going in.
All right. I'm going to hold you still now because I want to talk about another topic, and that you love, I'm sure, which is ad fraud. So basically, we all know that, recent studies showed actually there's 1/4 of the budgets that are always at risk through ad fraud. What can we do for that, and what is the in-gaming position on that, and what human thinks about that?
Yeah. This is one of the most fast-moving industries from a technology perspective. And I'll come back to what I said earlier. A security-first mindset is the learning in cybersecurity in the last 10 years, is that you do it by design up front. As much as you can make it not possible, that's much more effective than after the fact posting a bunch of guards to protect something in a security context. So I think the most important thing is a security-first mindset when you're designing it, going into these environments. The first thing we see is almost always the same. One, it's not real human, or two, in every emerging environment is that the first principle of fraud is that it follows the money, high CPM, it follows where there's low visibility, and it follows where there aren't any standards, right? And so all the way back to mobile, the first thing that happened in mobile is that it's a bunch of things pretending to be mobile. Or the first thing that happened in CTV is a bunch of things pretending to be CTV devices, right? And so there's ways to address that up front. For example, what we're doing with Anzu is actually embedding a signature, almost a watermark. Same thing with Roku, where we can say this is authentic, we know what the code is, and it minimizes the surface quite a bit.
Oh, great, great. So you mentioned Anzu. What's the position in that?
So, of course, there is the work that we do with human, and on top of that, there is a lot of things that you can do as an advertiser to stay safe. So, one, see your giant list of SSPs and check which one are transparent, which will provide you access to log-level data, which one will agree to be visible on all of its supply, who ensures they only buy a direct and only use the direct SDK in their inventory. There is a lot of using inclusion lists rather than exclusion lists, because we see today that people are trying to do exclusion. It's like looking at the beautiful beach over there with a trillion grains of sand and trying to handpick which one not to touch. It's impossible. And of course, avoiding made for advertising content. So, and I think this is what's beautiful about gaming, because if you focus on games that are in major app stores, that are reviewed by the app store, both the content describing it and the rating of it and the reviews, and each time it's getting updated, unlike a website or a web game, it must be reviewed again. And I think this combination of review from the app store and from the users, and an environment which is native and not web-based, that is regulated in such way, actually makes in-game far safer than many other alternatives. It's just about teaching people that it's like that, because it's not the first thing that comes to mind. I think it's super important to remember.
Right.
To just add to that, I think one of the things that Ben said, I think is very important. The premium content aspect of it, where you're working with specific publishers, where you know which games it is, you know who the publishers are, it's premium content, it's very defined. I think that's a major angle. I think the other angle is, in addition to all the technical protections, it matters who you partner with. So to the extent you're partnering with a premium partner, you're partnering with someone you trust, you're partnering with someone who will do what is needed to keep your campaign safe, and if something goes wrong, they'll be there to make it right. I think that's another angle on safety and fraud.
Do you think it's important to have an independent partner, actually, a partner, a third party, somebody external to your business to mark your safety, basically?
I think it's important to have third party measurement for sure, and I think that's one of the standards that is now present in-game advertising. So you don't need to take someone's word for it. That's there, but I think that's a component, right? I think having third-party measurement is a very important component. I think also having a publisher partner or a sales partner that you trust is another component. And I think when those things go together, then so much the better. Then it's a real multiplier.
I did not pay Joe to say that, I promise. But in all seriousness, I think from the third-party... Oh, sorry, Liat, please.
Go ahead.
The third-party perspective, one of the most important things about anti-fraud is collective protection. We have to make it more expensive to attackers, and that's one of the reasons why everybody should not try to do it in-house. And I'm not a walking advertisement, I promise. I don't. But in cybersecurity, the more you can protect across an entire ecosystem, the better advantage you have against attackers. That is fundamental to any security problem.
No way.
I also want to add that we're at a point that we're kind of lucky, maybe, to create companies after we've learned so much about fraud. So everything that we create in the future vision of the fact that it needs to be very, very protected. So we're buying only, like, we're not buying external traffic. Everything is through an SDK. Everything is 100% safe. We're integrating the third-party partners. Let's say like Open Measurement SDK, for example. This is something that is, for example, for us, was embedded in the SDK at the moment that we created it. So it's also very helpful for us that we've learned this from, historical cases of the industry of how much fraud we were exposed to. And we want to make sure that we keep ourselves as safe as possible and to be very transparent and sort of ready for the brands to be able to buy it. So this is something that we sort of like, it's always in front of us. It's always something that we think about, and that will help us as an industry in general, and specifically when it comes to in-game, to make it a safe place for brands to buy.
I mean, actually, digital has a bit of a bad rep for being a fraudulent environment, but that's mostly because of the traditional aspect of having a lot of stops along the way, and the more stops you add, the more chances for fraud along the way can happen. Like, there's just more room for error. The more direct you are, the less chances there are for fraud. That's just natural, and therefore in-game probably has very little fraud, at least in its current incarnation, because it was designed this way in the get-go. It's just really direct, and therefore there's very little room for fraud from the beginning. So it's actually quite a safe environment overall, while digital will still have fraud, and we will continue battling it, or the industry will continue battling it for years to come.
I mean, yeah. Some people need a job as well.
Exactly.
I mean,
Fraudsters need to make money too.
all right. So, we're talking about ad frauds. Let's jump on another topic, which is dear to my heart. Attention. Attention is dear to my heart because I work with all the big 6 agencies. I work with lots of direct advertisers, and right now, attention metrics are becoming a hygiene factor, actually. In gaming, we studies show that in gaming, users are exposed twice longer. Do you want to have a little take on that, Emma?
Sure, no problem. For attention, so one, in-game, when we talk about in-game, we also need to talk about the formats, because different formats will have different, attention will mean different things. Attention to an audio ad is different than attention to a digital billboard inside a game. It's different. And so that's one. When we talk about attention, we need to understand attention to what? What do we mean by attention? Probably IAB, if you're here, define it. So if we can define it, that will already be one step closer to measuring attention. And then I will call to all of the agencies you work with so that we can gather around a table and try to understand how we're going to measure it across different formats, and design for it. Obviously in-game, because it's a super engaging environment, it's naturally lend itself to get more attention, both for audio, both for more in-game, like I'm trying to digital in-game or billboard in-game, or I'm 3D ads, thank you. Sorry, someone help me. 3D ads.
IB selected the intrinsic ads.
Intrinsic, thank you. So I will...
Should we just call it in-game, no?
Okay,
So actually, no, because a lot of the in-games are the annoying full screens and small banners on top of the game. These are the category of in-game, so to differentiate, they place an intrinsic. We try to get it to in-play, but they say it's too resemblance to gambling, so they selected intrinsic.
I think in-game, intrinsic in-game, fair. I think some people are now using around the game for the banners and all of that. So Thank you, Eon. So to help differentiate. But And that, I think, will get us one step closer. Obviously, when you're looking at high quality content, you're already grabbing people's attention, and therefore it's very likely and it's logical that people are paying closer attention to the ads as well, and that just by proximity. So if you have great content, the brand wants to be associated, people will pay attention to it. If it's relevant ad, even better, people will pay more attention to it. The more relevant you are, usually you'll grab the user attention. That is just behavioral psychology. It's not anything new. And if we want to measure it, there are multiple ways. Primarily what we're looking at is how to leverage sensors and how to leverage the actual device. And I will say again, like in different computing technologies, to measure it better, and to actually understand how players engage with the screen. If the movement of the screen changes when they're holding when they're seeing the ad versus when they're actually playing. If anything, those micro movements can really be very defining in terms of determining the attention people are paying to the ad itself.
Environment is key.
Environment is key. Basically, use new tech.
All right. Talking about environment, Joe, what's your take on premium environment? Because, I mean, NBC is quite a premium environment.
It is, and again, to draw the parallel between CTV and in-game advertising, I mean, the level of content quality we know from decades of television, the higher the content quality, the more engagement it naturally drives. We think the same is true of premium intrinsic in-game advertising as well, where if you're in a premium game, you're surrounded by premium content and you're in a naturally engaging environment. You're playing the game. So I think it's pretty intuitive actually that you're going to have high attention there and probably high recall and association that goes along with it. So we're not surprised by that at all. That's part of our bet on why CTV and in-game advertising are good companions in a campaign.
Great stuff, great stuff. Somebody wants to take a jab at this question?
Maybe just to add that there is, I guess, just because of the format itself, a huge opportunity for attention, because, you know, when you play a game, you constantly engage with the content, lean in experience, no second screen, which is today you can't watch TV without being on your phone, or being on your phone without having the TV on, or doing something else. So, you know, and in a game you just can't do that because you lose the game, right? So, and the additional factor where the ads change in orientation, shape, and size throughout.
Dynamic.
So let's call it our internal mental ad blockers. Just can work in such environment. And you know, with research we did with companies like Lumen, for example, over the last year, actually had a different panel on that as well. We saw 3 to 4 times the results of attention just because, and again, I place it mainly on the content itself and how the ad is actually part of it. And when you think about it, the evolution of ads was always trying to connect the ad as tighter to the content to drive attention, right? And we feel that in gaming we reach to basically to the highest level where these things can meet together.
I think just one other point to build on that. I think the other thing that was so interesting to us about the Anzu platform was that the publishers were actually choosing where the ads were going to go in the game. So you had the game developer who knew the game the best, who had designed the game, figuring out how to natively insert so that it would be organic to the game. And I think that's also particularly, you know, driving of attention.
I will actually add to that. I think what we're seeing here is really relevancy, because when you decide, when you're trying to connect the ad to the environment, you're trying to make the ad relevant to that environment, and that's really what grabs people's attention. So if we're looking at research, we are exposed to about 6,000 ads a day. Our brain automatically blocks everything that we don't need because it's a processor and it protects us from overheating, really. We're just blocking information we don't require. The more relevant we can get the ad to be to the user at that point of time, the more likely we are to grab their attention. A great way to do that is by connecting the game environment to the ad, or by being something relevant. A great way is also understanding the player, understanding who they are and what they're doing to grab their attention. That's all layers of basically becoming more effective and becoming more relevant and useful to the player. Because the more useful you are to them, the more they like you.
Totally agree, and we have actually a great example exactly for that. When we launched our, again, years ago, when we launched first the programmatic ads, and this personalized, localized ads per user, what we saw that in environment like an open world, you had games that placed fake ads just to make the world look realistic. Yeah. So in some games it would be, because the developers were Russian, they would put Russian ads across the entire game. So when you walk there, you're just not used to seeing it. It feels a bit foreign, but imagine that if you're from the UK, you would see a Tesco ad instead of a fake Russian ad in your language. You feel, I'm not going to claim it makes the game a whole lot better, but it makes the game 1% better, more localized and personalized. And I think it's the first time we managed to create a format that makes the content 1% better.
I agree. And I think that imagine that you see the Tesco when you're already hungry and you've been walking a lot and you're outside and then you see and it's really hot outside and you see an ad to get some an ice cream out of the Tesco. So imagine you can do that.
Right,
we can.
I know we can.
The entire topic that we're talking about here when it comes to in-gaming is the fact that the ads are not annoying. So just by that fact...
Not intrusive.
Exactly. Just by that fact, the users are just more engaged. They're more open to see or listen to the ad in our case. And that already makes the attention better and the state of mind a little better for the user. So,
talking about attention being a hygiene factor, that brings up to talking about standards, actually. It's a new industry within the industry. The IAB, the MRC last year set new guidelines for in gaming. Was it needed? Who wants to take a jab at this one?
I'm happy to start. I mean, I think it's part of the maturation of the industry, in that there's third-party measurement in the industry. There's now industry-level standards. I think those are all things that reduce friction for advertisers, that allow them to start to test new mediums with more confidence, because they don't need to figure out every step on their own. There's a common set of agreements to go with it. So I think it's going to be very helpful.
And do you think? Quick question: do you think there are other things that needs to be done, or for now you pretty satisfied with the new guideline?
I think it's going to continue to develop, but I think the building blocks of having premium content, having trusted partners, having third-party measurement, having industry-level standards, starting to get more case studies and more success factors out in the market. I think those things will continue to build, and then sure, it's a brand new industry. It'll continue to develop. It's not going to be static by any means.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. The industry's very young. It's 25 years old, right? Finance is over 250 years old. We're finally getting to a place where we have real standards, real best practices. I don't think we need more standards. Well, I think one of the missing gaps is visibility on the standards that we already have and how well and consistent they're implemented. And sometimes it's mind-boggling to think that there is nothing that actually programmatically measures compliance to standards across the industry for anything in the supply chain. We're doing a study right now with large advertisers on how much standards being implemented affects risk on advertising, fraud, quality, return, that kind of thing, because it's a really important gap right now.
Right, great. Emma, what are your thoughts about it?
I already mentioned it before because I said attention, right? I said attention could probably be used, use a definition and some standards. So if this is the way that we want to measure, we probably should define at least that. I'm not saying necessarily we need a million other standards. Sometimes it's more about understanding what those mean. understanding the implementation and the practicality of it, because sometimes you write something on paper and there's a million one ways that someone can read it, like the law, and the implementation of it is slightly different. So we need kind of case law for standard maybe, to try to interpret what it means and what does it look like in the real and in the environment. Let's put it to take it to for a test drive and see what it looks like. But for me, first, probably attention could use some standard at least, so we can take it for a test drive for real.
All right, and on the audio part, actually.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wanted to add, everything that's new is scary, right? Like if it's new and I don't know it, then I'm sometimes looking for external validation or the standards and how to do it. And what was released now by the IAB is very much relevant to intrinsic in-game that is more visual, like the 3D world. And in the audio world, it's even newer, right? This is a standard that doesn't exist. And I think that can give a lot of confidence to advertisers if those standards will be actually created. Like, what is an audible ad? This is something that we are working on actively also with the IAB to try and understand, what does that mean for an ad to be audible? And I think that if this standard will exist, and this is something that the advertisers will know, it will also give them a lot of confidence to actually, run in those environments. So we're definitely, I actually think that a standard is sometimes we don't need to work for the standard, right? It's not just to have a standard for the standard, but that gives a lot of confidence. And this is something that I believe that in new industries we should definitely create and actively working on it.
One thing I forgot is probably first-party data. One of the things we are missing because of the transition for privacy-first environment or privacy-first regulations is how do we create first-party data? How do we send it? What do we do with it? The IP did work really hard to release a seller-defined audience framework. It didn't fully succeed. Let's put it this way. I'm sorry. They're still trying to kind of do a post-mortem to why, and trying to understand what went wrong and what needs to maybe, how do we redo it? And there's probably a lot of work there, but that's also what I said before. Sometimes we create a standard, and the standard can't lift. There's nothing, it can be implemented. So it is really important to take that extra step and then see how it lives in real life, and then maybe adjust the standard because it doesn't work.
And also to create the standard with the relevant people, right? With the
Yeah.
relevant players, because that's the way to create the standard.
Always. I think you have a great opportunity to create a standard. Just set up a standard and just go for it.
Let's have the opinion of somebody who builds a product, actually. What's your take on it?
So actually, I'm very excited about the standard that we created, and that it actually been received well. And for the first time, you can compare apple to apple an intrinsic in-game ad viewability results to the one of any other ad format. It took us years to accomplish. And again, everyone that builds a new standard needs to do this heavy lifting, which took us, I admit, much longer than we anticipated.
Was it transformative for your whole organization?
Yeah. For the first time, not only the brands can see and compare and get the validation that it's actually significantly higher with the same KPIs, but they were able to also get it audited by companies like Moat. Sure. And we're about to announce, I can't say it again, but there are additional measurement companies that for viewability specifically, we're about to announce very shortly. It was almost at the time for Cannes, but we decided to do something. You'll see it soon.
Continued.
To be continued. But in the end, I think that I also really agree with what Tamer said. I guess the main problem, and again from a fraud perspective, we have all of these amazing standards, and then you have players that claim to work by these standards, but actually they don't.
All right. Yeah, true. In many parts of our industry, by the way. Well, yeah. So, there was great discussion so far. I'm very excited about it, really. You're all awesome. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap this up quite soon. So, I'm going to ask you, how do you get people to start within in-game industry? Who wants to take this one first? No one?
I'll take it.
Come on.
We actually had a really interesting discussion about it before we started the panel about like education, right? Like I think that this is still a very, very young way of advertising. Like it's still evolving, and there is a lot of question marks about it. So I would say that education is key also for the advertisers to be familiarized, wow, that's a tough word, to get to know actually the different formats that they have within games, to try and understand how valuable it is and the audience that they can reach within games. And I think that's the key to actually be able to succeed in this world. The second thing is to choose your partners very, very carefully, to try and choose the partners that work directly with the players, that have the standards in place, and that you can feel confident in running with them, and you can feel confident in them actually educating you as well and teaching you about this world. That's my take on it.
It's a great take. Great take. Emma?
Me next, great. So we're doing women first, great, that's good. I would say familiarity. So we developed a really innovative product, a really new way of understanding identity. And then the market was very confused because they're not used to understanding how identity can be done without an ID in the first place. And it took a while. And it took also trying to work with, for example, advertisers to build cohorts that are similar to the personas they're already working with, to try to kind of match them, what they're used to buying, basically people, personas, in different environments, and creating something they're already understanding. Now we actually released a new product which adds demographic on top of it. We just announced it yesterday with a partner who is in the room right now. And that is taking it one step further to familiarity, because brands are used to targeting based on demographic. So that is to help kind of the industry taking smaller steps towards you and making it easier for them and less scary, because change is scary. Nobody wants to make a big leap. You don't know where you land. You like to make a small step, and then you see the next step, and then kind of like lead them to you, lead them to innovation. So I don't know, something like that.
Baby steps to innovation, basically.
Fantastic. Yeah. I love your summary. You do it.
I very much agree with those points. I mean, and I think the idea of using an analogy from media that you're comfortable with already seems like a great way to start. That you can take the same target audience and just extend it to this new platform. I'd advocate that you don't need to have it all the way optimized on day one. You can get started. I think getting started in sort of the lowest friction way is probably a good bet, where you can leverage existing assets and start to run them in a broad-based approach across multiple publishers. And then you can start to optimize, and you can start to figure out, you know, the particular titles that are going to work better for you, or the particular genres, or the particular formats. But being able to get started in a broad-based, low-friction way seems like the easiest way to do it. Leverage your existing target audience, easy way to get started, and then you can go from there.
So you want to make it accessible first, basically.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think once brands start to participate in in-game advertising, I think they'll start to see the results and they'll start to learn. But it doesn't all need to be figured out on day one. There's room for innovation and exploration.
Yeah, I completely agree with Joe that advertisers are hungry. They want to engage in new areas. But I think back to the promise of programmatic, which is data-led, right? All the data, the variability, the capability, all of that. So I think leading with data delivers confidence always in a new area, showing it, knowing that it's there, knowing that you can actually measure it and what kind of impact you're having, unlocks everything in a new environment.
Yeah, and I really like what Joe and Tamer said, and part of the journey we've been going through in the last, let's say, 3-4 years was evolving this entire new standard to make it completely programmatic, as standard as buying any other display ad or video, adding all the data that you want, all the validation from the partners that you know, and this kind of unlock a new thing that we started to see huge growth from, because what happened is that people before that want to activate in a game, let's say when Marvel activated in Fortnite to put the Avenger weapons in Fortnite, they did it with zero data. They have no idea what's going to happen. The only post-campaign report they got is an invoice for $10 million, right? Okay. So for the first time, they can buy programmatically, many genres, many environment, many platforms, display, video, and then collect the data, understand what's more effective, and then plan those huge activations. And this is what we were seeing, these small activation turning to very big activation, sometimes even with unique component and partnership with the game that was led by the data and the confidence and the knowledge they got from the ability to run in a standard way and comparing apple to apple, understand the value.
Okay.
Part of it is that familiarity. They understand the standard because it's similar to what they have right now, so they can compare it.
Exactly.
And that understanding makes them more comfortable because they understand, again, they understand it. And that is how you kind of get brands, usher brands into the unknown.
Definitely.
Anybody wants to add up anything? No? All right, thank you very much for your time today. That was awesome. Thank you for the attendance, and let's go have a drink. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Aurora, it's time to actually stop hiding.